Okay, so hi everybody, and thank you so much, Dr. Yasmin Aguib and Dr. Heba Aguib. I have two doctors with me today, which is an incredible honor. Both are part of our We Will Lead Africa Volume 2 book, which is a collection of everyday African leadership stories, and this particular volume is focused on stories by and about women. Yasmin and Heba are one of the stories inside of that volume. And we're going to have a kind of exploratory conversation today. I'm really keen. So their story is in the section of health innovators. And so we thought it was really relevant to bring this sister team to the table today to have a conversation about what they've been doing in the health sector in general, but also what the impact of the current situation, strange times that we're living in is, and we'll see where we go from there. I'm gonna point to the beginning of the story in the book. So at the start of this book, and at the start of the story, Yasmin and Heba speak about what it's like to be kind of world citizens, always on a plane, traveling, connecting continents, finding inspiration on board of planes when everything is switched off, which is just such a strange thing to think about, given that we've just been grounded and not had airplanes for the last few months. So I want to hear a bit about, like, what is the importance of this idea of connecting continents, and what's it been like to not have that that ability to just jump on a plane, and how has the last strange months that we're all trying to navigate, how has that been for you?
Heba, would you like to start?
I can start. Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you so much, Sarah, for the introduction. Yeah, it's been quite a long time now since we haven't been traveling, and you see how traveling and connecting continents, like you are saying, Sarah, it became part of our daily life and in our blood. So actually, it was a big change in the beginning, which turned out to be a very nice time out somehow to reflect and have some more time to connect with yourself and the place you are or you have to be in these times. I was always very excited to be flying between places because I knew I have a duty here and a duty there, and then thinking and reflecting on things in a different way and in different places, and being a citizen of the world was just logical and part of my life. But I also very much appreciate this the past 6 months or 7 or 8, I'm not sure, where we've been settling down a little bit more, and having a different type of connection. Like, I wouldn't say that we are now disconnected. We are connecting with the continents and with different people all over the world, even farther, because now we can plug into calls and conferences where you would see people from so many different places in one day, which is a great spirit. It has its challenges, and the human connection is missing, but it has a very nice new experience coming with it. And the combination at the end, which would come out after this crisis time is over, would be surely a better place, I would say. I don't know how you see it, Yasmin. I think
I think for me, it started when I was a little child, and we spent the first couple of years of our life with our parents in Germany. And then when I was 5, we had to leave to go back to Egypt. And it was a moment where I realized I don't want to choose. Actually, I want to go with my parents, but I also stay with my friends in the country where I grew up in the first 4 years of my life, or 5. So I said, I'm coming back and I will be traveling back for sure when I was a kid. Then I had my first big trip when I was 16, and it was during school. And I decided, okay, I need right after school to be traveling between all these places and to meet all the people I love, and I want to live with them, not just like like meet with them and go. I want to live in part in Europe, part in Africa, part in that. And then I remember when I got that scholarship when I was 18, it was a program about connecting cultures. And in my mind, it got set like in stone that I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be a bridge, right? So I planned, and that's my mission in life, that I'm going to be a bridge between countries and cultures, because I experienced how nice it is and how enriching it is to live a colorful life. Well, the new thing is that when I was younger, I thought about it in a very naive way, that it is a diverse, colorful life, but recently I realized how much responsibility it is and how much work and effort. So it is not as easy and always enriching and uplifting, because it is also when you are a bridge, or when you have this responsibility, then you are also sometimes torn between the places, between the cultures, between the peoples, between decisions of who to prioritize, right? And it makes you question your identity and yourself every few years when you are in front of this bridge is like, okay, which road should I go now? But still, I do not regret, and I think that I've been made for this. So it's part of my calling to have these dilemmas and to be torn and to go through these processes where I redefine my purpose every phase, because I stopped when I was like a few years ago. I was really sometimes like, I have to redecide every month. But now I realized, okay, I take decisions, I follow them a couple of years, then I reflect, then I go back to follow the same road and scale it up or develop further, or choose to drift to a new path, but in a rhythm that I control. So when COVID came, it was a very good time to again have this reflecting phase, because as Heba mentioned, we've been running, chasing targets and dreams, which is important, because you know that when you work in our region and our countries, you need to sometimes double and triple and quadruple the efforts. So it was good to be forced not to just go like a train, but to slow down. So I think it was very beneficial. And what Heba said, that it made us realize again that we do not have to travel all the time, because what we experience in our personal lives, that you can be living with someone in a house, in the same house, and you don't feel connected with that person. They don't know anything about you. And someone else in another different country, in a different time zone, is more connected to you. It's the same thing also in work and everything. So it made us realize this also more, to build real connections that are more solid beyond being physically on the same table or in the same place.
Like it's been like a retreat somehow.
Yeah.
It's in positive sense of the retreat, maybe experiencing it different because it had to be like that.
Yeah, and this idea of connecting, obviously, like we may never have done this call if it weren't for this going on as well. So this is, I completely, that resonates with me, that
we would have waited until we got funds to meet somewhere and then say, oh, how are you? And now it's like, no, we don't need much more than a Zoom subscription, and we get the ball rolling.
Yeah, so the obstacles that we had put up weren't real in many ways. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The other part that really resonates from hearing this and is around this idea of a bridging identity. I always end up in this conversation. I guess that probably says more about me than anything else. But I often think about myself as well as kind of holding the space between, right? Fitting in everywhere and not fitting in anywhere, really. And it really resonates to hear about what responsibility that is, in particular, what you're able to do, right? Because you have access in different directions, in ways that that other people don't. And so I guess I have a question about, with this kind of multiple identity, where does being African fit in with all of that?
It's in the core. It's like the thing is, people would always ask you where you feel at home, or where's the definition of home being someone who's always globally embedded in so many ways. And I think for me, the African identity is the core of everything I'm doing in my daily life. It's the way I grew up. You take it with you, and then you bring together some new things and shape up and merge, and then you become, like Yasmin mentioned earlier, it's very interesting that you always have like a type of, after a couple of years, and a sort of identity crisis actually, because you're trying to combine so many things, then you say like, stop, I need to find out now, who am I? I remember times where I was writing down in Arabic my thoughts to the same situation, and then in German I would find out that I have different opinions about the same situation in different languages, and then you merge, and then you become with the core of the African identity and the Egyptian roots and the Nubian roots, a better and better version of yourself. So it's a pathway where you grow up with this core of a tree, out of my perspective, and everyone develops then based on his experiences and how many people he meets and many places he goes. Like each city I've been living in had an influence on me, even different cities in Germany, and then different in Europe and London, here and there. It adds to your personality, but you remain the same in the core. It's so funny that you develop, but you are the same person somewhere deep inside. The values, everything.
I think that it's okay. One thing you said is that you probably, as a person, Sarah, attract the question of identity and being torn, right? So if this is a very important, that your energy attracts people who also resonates with you, as you said. In positive times, or in negative phases, sometimes I feel like this. There is an Egyptian like quote that says, "Oh, you are like those who are dancing on the stairs. Neither the ones in the upper floor have seen them, or in the lower floor have heard them." So sometimes I used to feel like, who am I? I don't mean anything. I follow this sometimes, I pick from everything what I want. What does this make out of me? And in the difficult times, right, when I'm unhappy with myself. And in other periods, I say, oh, I'm like a gymnast, right? I can bend my legs like this and then jump in the air and then help on different sides because I understand. Now, the question when you ask an Egyptian about the African identity, that's a very complex question, right? Because as an Egyptian, right, everyone sees himself in a different way. And some people even don't know. And you don't know if you're defining yourself by where your family, where you grew up in Egypt, or where the origins of your families are in Egypt, whether in the north or in the south, whether you have a Turkish origin, or whether like us, your dad is Nubian and your skin is darkened, but not also really dark. So like you sometimes don't know, or you are a mix of everything, right? When we were younger, in our generation, when I was 15 and 14, when I knew about a critical topic, like when we were very busy with studying Palestine, we were just Middle Eastern. When there is a problem with the water and the Nile, when we were in the 90s, late 90s, and discussing it, I felt like, yes, the Nile and where it comes from, and we're all 9 countries. And so, but we didn't feel the dilemma. The dilemma came a little bit later, and I think this is when I came to study in Germany, and then some would call me an Arab, some would call me an this, and then at some point I said, no, stop giving me the identities. I had this conversation, I think after 3 months with some colleagues from university. I told them I'm African. And they said, oh yeah, really, you're African? I was like, no, really, I'm African. And until now, it is a problem, especially recently, that when it says when there are initiatives about where the skin color is the main thing, I always sometimes I just told Heba like a couple of weeks ago, Heba, you are a bit darker. You have a privilege now because you can speak as an African and people will believe you. But for me, I'm somehow a mix, and it is a little bit of a struggle, right? But I feel when I was 18, I chose. Then my friends asked me, how do you want us to call you? I told them, call me an African. So I think this is how was how I felt since 18, like Heba said. But also with the nature of my work, I work now on genetics, right? So it is an interesting question. 3 years ago, we were presenting some data about an emerging study in genetics in North Africa and how we're connecting it to. And then someone said, yeah, I mean, this is an Egyptian study, but what is an Egyptian? And how do you define an Egyptian? So I don't know, maybe we can discuss later, because you said you're interested in all the healthcare topics in Africa and all that. It is a big decision, a discussion, and we need to be very careful as African that we don't split in North and South and Central and sometimes in meetings you see that the maps, when you say a big study in Africa, suddenly Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt are not there. And then in a talk in Rwanda 2 years ago, in the beginning of my talk, I said, I have a confession. I feel as an Egyptian very hurt because I feel that in many presentations, the North Africa is cut off. No, we have to, when we talk about studies and discussing origin and migration and all that, it's not to separate the countries or the regions or the races and the ethnicities, but no, it's to gather information to make us stronger. Yeah, it's a very big question, so it needs a whole session, I think, about.
Yeah, so maybe we'll do a PhD at some point together on on that subject. But I think you raised some really, really important questions, right? About well, there's identity in terms of our biology and our genetics and so on, and there's then identity that is the stuff that is constructed in relationship to others and in relationship to the world, and sometimes we only figure out those identities when we're given all kinds of labels, right? There's in our first volume, there's a gentleman who writes a story about the Nile Project, which connects the all the countries along the Nile, which seems like almost a more natural or organic way to think about national identity, right, than like arbitrary borders in many ways. Yeah, so that's a long rabbit hole that we can go down on another day.
Yeah.
Maybe let's talk a little bit about the work that you do, and in particular the work that you've done with the Aswan Heart Centre in Egypt. There's a little part of your story where you say, in spite of advice by friends and mentors that if you go back, you would only be doing development work and will never excel in your fields, we believed in the cause and in ourselves. And such statements were actually very inspiring to us because it confirmed a misconception of the relevance of field work. So what was it that drew you to that project? What is it? Where is it at now? Tell us a bit about that.
I think Heba should start because she's the one who joined the project first.
Okay, so I start. So actually we grew up knowing that we will always do something for the benefit of the people we are living with the people in need. We need to bring in all our knowledge. This is how my father and mother grew us up. Whatever we learn, we need to give further and benefit people who are in need and less privileged, maybe, etc. So when we studied in Germany, we always had the thinking, I think it's me and I, when we talk about it, we always had these plans of which project we can do in Egypt or in the MENA region or in Africa when we come back, in order to, in my case, use mechanical engineering and simulations and all of that, or medical engineering, which I did my PhD in. So after I studied in Munich, I did my PhD in medical device technologies. And then I joined the TU Berlin, the University of Technology in Berlin, to build a campus on the Red Sea in Egypt as a satellite campus of the TU Berlin for sustainable development reasons. And it was the first step in going and connecting Egypt with Germany or Europe and North Africa needs. And it was a great experience of how to bring things together, the engineering knowledge, all the solid high-tech innovation education I had on the grounds on such a project, bringing students from all over the world to study in Egypt. We had the students from South Africa, from North Africa, studying about water management, sustainability, etc. And there, after building this campus, I felt like I'm ready for the next challenge, and it's time to do something new. And during that time, and this is where destiny brings a lot of things together, there was a conference which we had at the campus, and I was heading the campus, where Professor Magdi Yaqub brought international professors and a community from all over the world and the team Aswan together to have a scientific conference on heart disease. It was plug research in cardiovascular. And it's always like a dream of every Egyptian to meet him one day and talk about things. And when I was thinking about what can I do in medical technologies in Egypt, I thought, actually, I would love to meet Professor Yaqub, but I never knew how this would happen. And there came the chance. I was in the campus as the representative for the University of Technology in Berlin, in Egypt. Professor Yaqub came, I said hello, and we went through the campus to show him machines and what we are doing, and then show him the conferencing area and that we're going to be together for the coming days. And actually after like 2 or 3 sentences, he told me, what are you doing next? And I said, I'm looking to do something in Egypt. I would like to do research, and I talked about visions, and I wasn't in the heart disease area at that time. So I was talking about medical technologies in general. And he said, why don't you visit us in Aswan after this conference? And then we started talking about that he would like to build more research. At that time, we said, we didn't talk about a research center. We thought about bringing together all the research to be from Aswan, connected to the Aswan Heart Center. And so I went, and by the end of the year, we met again and joined. And Yasmin came to visit me. She also joined, and we started building the Aswan Heart Research Centre for cardiovascular disease research. I was responsible for the biomedical engineering and innovation laboratory, numerical simulations from prediction to prevention to optimizing surgery using simulation and patient-based data, and follow-ups, and Yasmin for her part with the life sciences. So it's been a great journey actually, and a lot of very critical destiny moments to go exactly there where I would have loved to always go, to be honest. I would never could have drawn it in a way. And then with Yasmin, it was an amazing experience. Yasmin, I hand over to you.
I think I'll focus on the point that we've written about others' opinions and others' feedback, because actually during that trip when I visited Heba, and my visit to the hospital turned into a job interview with the professor. It was not planned at all, and also the years before were not planned. Like I was planning to leave my job in Munich and go to join a public health program in Harvard in Boston, and then I got pregnant, and then I was in the maternity leave, and I was planning to take a boat on the Nile, have a break from breastfeeding and crying babies and all that, and now decide what I want to do, because I had already, before I knew I was pregnant, told my boss, refused an offer to join, like to lead a department, and I told him I'm leaving, I'm going to the US. And then 1 week later I told him, well, I got pregnant, and it was like I felt very like in the movies, when you you're irresponsible or so. You're not in control of your future and of your plans. Another woman, you go and then you get pregnant and then you. So then during that maternity leave, I had agreed with my mom and Heba, I will go take a boat and think for myself a little bit, try to find out what my next steps now are. And I think it was during such a moment where we're like organizing something when Heba called me and you can come and visit now. I went to visit and it turned into an interview, and then it was just there. And at the beginning I was like, no, but I have a little baby and I don't know how I will travel between countries, and oh no, it's not possible. And actually it takes also really strong leadership. Like Professor Aguib knows what he wants. He has the vision and he doesn't take a no for an answer easily. And this is also, I think, what we learned during the past 6 years, because like he said, okay, go think about it, come back again. And I'm like, yeah, okay, thought about it, not feasible. No, what are reasons? And then we were discussing, and then, no, we will solve this and it will be easy. It was not easy, but managed to gather the resources to reach a specific target. And he made promises back then where we thought like, what, really? How come he's promising that? And actually it's unfolding in the past few years that he knew what he was promising. And it's a talent, and it's also knowing your capacities and what you are able of if you get the right people. This is what we are now learning and doing with the next generations, not to accept the givens and the conditions, and 1 + 1 is not 2. It's sometimes much more.
Yasmin, please. Math has its just.
Yeah, no, it's not 2, definitely. It's really the sum of a lot of of body, all the energy and the will and the dreams and the vision. You cannot quantify them. They have to be strong and drive you. And then I had taken the decision. I had mentors here and professors when I told them this is the next step. And really, like, one of them was very, very clear. I mean, he is a very successful, also extreme person. So he told me, oh, so you decided to ruin your career. I had just taken the decision when that professor, very firm and sure of himself, and he is very smart and very successful, told me, so you decided to ruin your life and your career, and this was it as a successful researcher and scientist in the field of life sciences and medical research. So you can now call yourself a development worker and like that, okay? And at the beginning, you're just like, oh my God, oh, what is he saying? And is this true? And he's so arrogant. And why is he judging me and pretending he knows about the future? And also, he told me like building his research center here in Europe took him between 7 and 9 years. So there it will not be before like 20 years and it will be too late. And he like all that. Actually, I'm pretty thankful for him, because what you would be telling yourself in your own head, someone just hit you with it and then you had to deal with it. It would have come sooner or later. The latest, when you realize that your plan is not working as you thought it will, it's stretched to the triple of the time. This is when you where I thought, did I ruin it? Like that. So I had to struggle with this during the first years. And then at some point I said, wait a moment. It was actually when we were celebrating the opening of the research center, and it was amazing. All the newspapers were writing and reporting about the technical advancement and all that, when I was like, no, don't congratulate me. This doesn't count. This is not the actual work is yet to start. This is just not the thing that I'm aiming for. And then at some point I thought, why? I mean, first of all, what is wrong in being a development worker? Why does anyone give himself the right to judge it? Because without development workers everywhere, all over the world, everyone would be just egoistically following their paths and their things, and our ability as communities and as countries to to build something together wouldn't be there, because they are actually also the real bridges between knowledge and transferring it, technology and transferring it. They're giving. And so what is wrong? Why did I follow that narrative and psychologically let it put me under such a pressure? So yeah, I should own it. This is part of me, and this is actually my choice. I was not forced. I was not anything. This is my choice, and I choose it every day. So I just say yes, and I redefined how I see my successes. So when you are in the field of research and science and all that, usually the norm is you see publications and patents and all that. And I say that's the wrong way to measure the impact. It's not by how high the impact factor of a journal is. And I wanted to write about that like 10 years ago during my PhD. But then I had to just live it and say, I see the impact of what I do as a package of everything, of training, education, research. So everything I achieve every year counts. Yeah, this is just for the sake of time. I think we can stop here. It's also a big topic. And
can I add something to here? Because I see somehow while we're talking a similarity to the African identity and this identity. And then are you doing development work? Are you now a high-tech engineer? Are you now a scientist? Can you combine helping people on the ground and doing impacts with other forms of success? I think the more you want to label things and try to put it into boxes, the more difficult our lives are. And I'm talking now very wisely, but the past 1.5 years particularly, I've been going through a lot of thinking of who I am in this combination and how can I merge it all to be making sense and a story of my life without contradictions, or when it is going to start to be homogeneous. And I think we need to do this effort of letting the boxes of simple clarifications diminish or dissolve, and accept and embrace that this is a very colorful world with so many different perspectives, and you don't have to be a specialist in that, and you don't have to be in a country here or there, but like just we are like a woven pattern of many things. And then when we embrace the differences, we don't judge ourselves too hard, and then we are not always failing from the different perspectives, because yeah, like Yasmin was saying, like there was a time where the mechanical engineering in me was saying, oh my God, you're not doing the high tech you should be doing. We know how German engineering is being done, and this is not exactly it. But it was a new way of innovation and process innovation, which is very much needed, of innovative solutions adapted to the needs of the society and the community. The innovation is out of the box, so why are we trying to put it into boxes?
Yes, and I think the definition of innovation is not the classical one that everyone is thinking, I have to invent a new idea. It has to be an iPad that has a triangle shape, or it has to be no, innovation is, as Heba said, processes, a new place, a new group, a new communication style, a new cocktail of tools and toolboxes that help you reach maybe a goal that has been reached before in shorter time, or in a different way, or under different conditions. It's redefining goals and methods and paths. And not only like tech and innovation and everyone is innovating solutions, while the ones innovated during the past 20 years have not been exploited yet.
Right.
So actually we should be innovative in how to exploit what has been innovated, and solutions that have been already found in a better way to reach everyone. Sure. To be cheaper, like more economic, and not just like top it up, and then always reach a specific percentage worldwide who can always have the cutting edge, and then the rest is still not exploited. So I think this should be in different fields, and it is actually the discussion of how to exploit better now and on the short term and mid term before spending more money and in finding like faster and more advanced always, right?
Sure.
It also depends on how we define advanced, but the exploitation needs to be our focus.
Yeah, and
exploitation in a positive way, of course.
Yeah, and so how that's like innovating how resources and innovations get distributed, and how people who didn't necessarily previously have access but get access, or how we innovate for specific groups of people, like with their specific needs and communities' needs in mind. So can I put a flag in that for a future conversation? I would love to have a deep conversation about innovation. I've been thinking a lot about that, and in particular in the African context, whatever that means, but how we need to really reinvent and deconstruct the way we think about innovation. I completely with you on the tapestry of our identities, and something I've spoken about previously in these short videos is when we did this volume, it was so hard to create categories for the amazing women in the book. Like, it was such a difficult job to do. We needed in some way to label, because we needed to guide the reader, right? But in the end, we tried to create some richer categories and some broader categories to put people in, because all of you defy categorization completely. You're all multi, which is what's so beautiful about the stories. So I'm like struggling to think what the most important final question might be, but maybe I'll carry on that vibe of multi. And one of the things we spoke about in advance of this call was what a time to be a leader. And it's not just COVID, it's so many things that seem to be bubbling to the surface. Black Lives Matter, Me Too, the kind of pressure cooker of COVID that's making things like violence against women come to the surface, right? Like, all these things that we really need to put our attention and energy and innovation towards, because the system or societies aren't working for so many people. And so I guess what I'd love to hear a little bit about is, like, what are some of the causes or other ideas or tensions that are drawing your attention at the moment? How are you engaging in them? What does that mean for your day-to-day? How do you balance all of these different things that seem to need attention at the moment from us?
Should I start? Do you want to start, Yasmin?
Let's alternate.
It's a very challenging time, right? We cannot see the advantages, like what she said in the beginning, without seeing how much it's affecting everything. And in my current work also with the BMW Foundation, I see a lot of what needs to be done for the transformation of the economic system to be more sustainable and just, and for a future. I wouldn't just say for a just and sustainable future, for a future at all, out of my perspective. And there's so much to be done, and because you mentioned again the intersectorial and who needs to be together on the table in order to solve issues. There are so many solutions at the source. There are so many ways, and ambitious people and responsible people who are leaders in their own spots and places around the world, who need to be working closer together and trying to get and connect and work closer together. And of course, there are businesses, entrepreneurs, field workers suffering a lot. We see in the medical area a lot of challenges in Africa. If I have to think about it, it makes me very angry how much of the funding is now not sufficient at all to cover up the needs of what needs to be done now for solving the COVID crisis or tackling basic healthcare needs. And if you look on a global level, there is enough money and opportunity in this world to solve a lot of, not every problem, but a lot of challenges which are existing. There's a lack of a lot of political and a will to implement these changes. So we need as leaders to take it in our hands and define problem one. We need those people to be working together. Let's get them together and tackle it. Like a parachute task force to tackle issues. And we see how solvable they are. We've been there, we're doing it. Yasmin and I with the center, other people's, the book is amazing. The women who are doing so many different approaches and achieving something. So it's not theoretical, I don't want to say bullshit, it's not theoretical anything, but this is like facts and things on the ground, and you see how people are moving things. So I think people always say there is the new normal after COVID, and looking forward, there is the new whatever. I think we have the climate crisis, we have people suffering for the longest time, we have the healthcare, the diseases, the cardiovascular diseases of this world. We have poverty, inequality, lack of diversity, sustainable development goals. We know them, and we just need to break them down and see what needs to be done where with the right people in order to achieve something. It sounds very simple. It is, I think, out of my perspective, all doable if enough people, a critical mass comes together and take the lead and do it. And this is, I think, what you're trying to show with the book and what we are trying to have this conversation for, to show positive examples that it is doable if you tackle it with a strong will and perseverance and what we're talking about, collaborative spirit and all of that. So I hope this is inspirational enough, and it's not only the COVID crisis or the climate crisis. We are living it. This is what we know. Growing up in Africa, we know all the challenges and the crises are not being invented lately. We're living in them. So there is a positive perspective with the strong will which we can carry on together. Okay, I got very emotional. No,
as we said at the beginning, I think that the time came for us and for me and for any others to hibernate in one place and think and reflect again on the past. I didn't have at the beginning too much time, because while I was like saying, okay, will I now go back to the hospital or will I stay here, or what should I do? My daughter here, if I leave her, my mom can't come back, and then while doing that, airports shut down, right? So the question wasn't there anymore. And then we had to build a COVID testing lab in the hospital, and we didn't know if we're going to get supplies, how to train the staff, all that. So we had to build very quickly a task force, and everyone see who's on the ground where the hospital is and who are the other expertise where. And we just kept working for weeks on how to build that platform and gather all the capacities virtually and physically to do that. This was like 3 months where we're like day and night working on that. And I think when we had a system and everyone was trained and we were like sure that everything is going well, we redefined all our program. So it wasn't research anymore. Suddenly I was doing diagnostics with a great responsibility if we just don't see. I mean, there was a discussion once where it was, if we now start testing for COVID, might we now risk more infections, because it's a huge responsibility to work and under safety conditions. And there was that moment where I had said, okay, now if I say I will do it, then we'll be doing it. If I say no, I haven't done this before, it's not my expertise, that I carry such a responsibility now, it would just have been off the table, and we would have closed the activity of the hospital for a while, right? Which means we have to handle patients that are dying, that need urgent surgeries. So to close a hospital and have them not rescue them, is it better than risking COVID infections? No, because the extreme scenario is you have them on the verge of life anyway, right? So it was a time where I learned that you have sometimes to dare. In some cultures, you'd have to calculate and really see expertise and all that. But sometimes you just have to do, as Heba said, what you have to do. And it was very interesting for me to go through that. And then afterwards, it's not over yet. But what I was reflecting, because I was reading and studying it a lot, of how the different countries were reacting, how different countries were able to innovate to the point innovations and not rely on waiting on others' results. They were creating the data. They were creating the solutions. So I started to see Africa, where were we strong? Where were we able to react fast? Where can we lead? And where do we need to follow? Or it is realistic that actually there is a distribution. So that some countries and some populations and some communities are faster in something than the other. But what we need to change is that it's not always the same people who don't have the privilege in being able to react fast. And that was making me sometimes angry, and I tried in my scope to change that, and I think we did very well. But still, it became for me a question that is bugging me in the past 4 months. What is it? It is also about exploiting what is there. It is about distributions, about all the rights and capacities and capacity buildings. Like going back to what the professor said, is the scale this, and are we, which norm do we measure ourselves to? It all reveals in such situations. It's then not about talk, it's about reality. It's about funds that are there, expertise that are there on the ground. And I think that for me, this is something that drives me through my work anyway, all the past 10 years. But now we have a case study that is so clear, that gives you more defined points of action that we can work towards. And then came the other things that maybe in the pre-discussion, like because maybe people were gathering around the same place, so around one screen, around the online, right? We're webinars and the Instagram, and we're reading the same news, and we're like that because we're working and we're checking online and all that. Suddenly, joint problems came also very clear. Like in the topic of Black Lives Matter, it's not a coincidence. I mean, there is a reason why the gun violence, all that is, people suddenly have the energy to mobilize and to change something. It's because we all had a period where we were in one place, and where what's bugging us came up to the surface, and we said, no, I have to change that. So every group, or depending on our problems, had issues that surfaced, and you had the focus to also see others' issues and decide to show solidarity and support. Now, a couple of, yes?
The connection, again, the cross-word connection, which we were talking about in the beginning, was even more intensive, right?
Yeah, this connectivity that you experience on the small scale in your work with your colleagues, it was leveraged now to bigger circles. And what the past I think 10 days, I've been very busy with the issue of this sexual abuse. It started with a specific case in Egypt, then understanding the definition, the difference between sexual abuse, assault, harassment, all that was all just one thing for us as women. it's not just an Egyptian issue, it's all over the world, but in every country it's with a different scale. So now things are popping up, and while I was starting to communicate a lot about my work on social media, I found, and everyone tells you, you have to focus on one thing, because so that the ones who follow you know what you stand for and what your mission is. And like, I found myself, no, I cannot just focus on healthcare topics, which is my expertise, but I'm a woman too, and I'm African too, and these are all my expertises. And if we don't engage with others' problems, especially with these women issues that they are part of our growing up, but we didn't have the awareness and the support to address them in our own minds, no, I have to process them now, because we have the responsibility of the next generations. This is a very big topic that
Right?
I think we've answered somehow your question about that. If you have the drive to change things, of course, expertise is very important, but your expertise is not only defined by your education, training, and career, professional career. It's also, your expertise is defined by your gender. You're expert in your own gender's history. You're expert in your identity, ethnicity's history. You're expert about the culture you're living in. So you have different types of expertises that you should, when it is necessary, have a voice in representing what you think is right and ethical when need be. Yeah, I think that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Expertise based on your lived experience is often kind of put further down in the hierarchy of which knowledge is most important, right? But it feels like that's coming up to the surface. So I'll put another flag in that one for a future conversation. It sounds like we could have many, many more of these. I want to lift up one of the last things that you said here about now that we are discovering it, or have the space to pay attention to it, or indeed finding the language even within ourselves to begin to address some of these things, we have a responsibility to do that for next generations. And I lift that up. It was one of the things that came out very strongly in this volume by women in particular. Many of the women in the stories talked about not just the fact that they were kind of standing on the shoulders of other women, or indeed even ancestors, right? Like that they felt that was part of their work, but that they were doing this for daughters, future granddaughters, et cetera, further down the line. And so maybe that's a nice kind of forward-looking, hopeful place to end our conversation today. I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you so much, and for everything that you do, your commitment and perseverance. We've talked about big decisions and taking some risks, and defying some of the labels that other people put on us, because some things just have to be done, and they must be done now. You have to do what you have to do. Thank you for all that you do. Any final words from either of you, both of you?
I think all the thanks goes to you, because you create platforms that even we don't do the effort to reflect or to process without these platforms. And I think that sharing is what changes it from just momental experiences to collective legacies for the future generations, as you said. So what you're doing in gathering all these people, maybe in the future we also will get to learn each other and work on other projects together with all these amazing women and men from the both volumes, because at the end, your energy and the other We Will Lead Africa co-authors, I think your energy, right, attracts these people where they have something in common. Not everyone will apply and send their essays, right? So yeah, thank you. And Heba has the book in her hand.
I totally agree, because I think when you are alone pushing something forward, it always feels very lonely. I had Yasmin and I were working together, which is amazing because we had this sister power pushing things, and when someone was like hanging behind, the other one was pulling. But alone, to know, to read the stories and understand how different people in different situations and how much similarities are there helps a lot. And I hope that all the people in the book, we get connected and pushed together, because it gives a certain hope and an energy, generates energy to push forward, right? Because otherwise it's a lonely pathway if you don't connect with those who are having similar intentions and visions. So thank you, Sarah.
Thank you both. I appreciate your time and I appreciate you.
Thank you for having us and inviting us.
Stop recording.